Okay, this is another episode of Thorinquiry, my interview series on my second channel. And this one is going to be featuring Fresco, and he is a battle rapper who is from, I believe, the Midwest, right?
Yep, that's right.
He's from the Midwest, and interestingly enough, he actually does have a past that ties into the esports world. So we're blurring the lines a little bit. I mean, people may or may not be aware that I actually am a big fan of battle rap. I followed it for many years. I think people actually vaguely know, because one time I did a video where, I used like the, not screen share function, but I like showed my screen in the video, and apparently I hadn't like disabled that like bookmarks bar, and so you could see all my bookmark folders, and apparently some people were laughing because like since it's all in alphabetical order, it was like ASMR, battle rap, esoteric occult, or something, it was almost as though I'd set it up to look like, he's into everything, this guy, so I remember people saw battle rap and they were like, what the fuck? And I was like, yeah, listen, if you know how much shit I talk, you should know I'd love that stuff. It's right up my alley. So let's start here, Fresco. Like I alluded to there, you are actually someone who, you played some Counter-Strike back in the day. You've been involved in esports on like a casual level, right? What was that?
Yeah. Well, in high school, I was like a private school kid, and I was very sheltered. My parents didn't let me go to sleepovers at friends' houses. I couldn't drive myself to school, but I bought myself a computer, and that was all I was into. So I played Counter-Strike 1.6. My team was all in Louisiana. We played in Cal P together. So that's the highest we got to in 1.6. And we wanted to go to CPL really bad, so we ended up getting to go. But they would I flew to Everland, I flew to CPL twice, I flew like all over the place. My parents would let me do that, but they wouldn't let me go to a friend's house for the weekend or whatever. It's kind of weird. But yeah, no, I was super into it. And then after Counter-Strike, I was into Quake. And there was a guy named Rafiq Lost Cause who wanted to come to, he wanted to come to a tournament in Chicago. I'm from Rockford, Illinois, so he came to my house and boot camped with me. So I practiced with him. Okay. He ended up getting first, and I got second. But while he was here, we went to a local internet cafe just to see. He thought somebody might be playing Quake there. I'm like, dude, nobody in Rockford plays Quake. Okay. So we go to the LAN center, and there's a kid there with a Bible on his
Rafa
mouse.
By any chance?
It is Rafa.
Okay.
And at the time, Rafa does not have internet at home. Yes. And him and Rafiq play a couple of games. Rafiq's like, let's get some $10 games going. But Rafa at this time was like younger and even more like Christian values type stuff. Okay. And he was not about, to gamble, but he's like, well, I'll play you though. So they play. This was when Quake 4 was out. So we were playing Quake 4, but Rafa was still playing Quake 3. So Rafiq and Rafa faced each other a couple games, and Rafiq won 2-1, but he was surprised that Rafa took a map off of him. So I'm like, this dude's actually good. So I got him to my house. I let him play on my internet, and I had him over a bunch. Like every weekend, he would come over and LAN with me. And at the time, we played Quake 4, and I was better than him at the time. And just slowly, he started overtaking me. And then, of course, once he got an internet connection of his own, he took over, and then he beat Jibo in Athens or something, and then just started winning everything. But yeah, Rafa is one of my best friends, and I still talk to him all the time. I know Dehang and those guys too, but yeah, that's kind of my esports stuff. I 1.6, I was okay. Saurus, I played in Invite, but really that was just off of the strength of 1.6 being Saurus being easier than 1.6. Yeah. And I don't know. I always loved it, but it was something I could never get to that top level at. And when I transferred into battle rap, I took all the same things I learned about clan hop, because I was a huge clan hopper. Right. I'd clan hop all over the place just to get better acclaim or make it to a higher rank or whatever. So I learned that politic stuff from gaming and brought it into battle rap, and was able to use that to my advantage in something that was brand new, that didn't really it wasn't brand new because there was the freestyle tournaments and stuff like that, but the YouTube recorded one-on-ones that were pre-written, there wasn't any kind of anybody doing that. So I kind of had a leg up in that I had experience in something similar.
Okay, so actually, I wasn't even aware you were that into esports. I thought you meant more as like you knew a bit about Counter-Strike, because you said you remembered who I was and who Moses was. It was on this video, because I made a video basically where, as a throwaway line, I just used, because it was fitting to what I was saying. I used one of your lines basically from a battle rap, because I think you got one of the better pens. So I used this line, and then you actually appeared in the comments. It was your account, it's your real YouTube account, and you said I knew you from back in 1.6 or whatever. But the problem with that is you have to realize now esports has gotten big, it's like everyone says that, it's like that famous thing where, like everyone claims to have been at some famous boxing fight or something, but it's like a million people claiming it now and they couldn't. So you actually were following the esports side of things as well?
I was, and I don't remember if it was you or someone else, but I don't know if you remember on Gotfrag, there was an article about Shagwire and how he lost all that weight. Did you write that?
I don't think it was an actual article. I think it was just like speculation because people thought he was like smoking meth basically because he did lose it very fast. Yes. Yeah,
I remember that vividly. I do remember that. I was on Gotfrag. No, I've been in it. My Steam ID is 150331. I remember my ESEA. If you go to users and you put in question mark, I'm user number 304 on ESEA. I was one of the first 300 people to sign up for ESEA, and I won ESEA in like May 2014 or something, like when you win the video card for the whatever. Right, I won some regional lands and stuff like that for Quake and Counter-Strike, but and obviously nothing major, no major accomplishments, but I did play in WSVG for Quake 4 where I beat some guy and then I faced Sturmy second round and I played him on Galang. And Sturmy's an Italian guy and I'm Italian, so I was saying some stuff in Italian to him after that. And then we were playing his best map first, but I picked it. I didn't make him pick it. I knew it was his best map. It was my best map too. And I got first blood on him, and then I got second kill, third kill, and I wasn't letting him have the railgun. And this is when the maps were 15 minutes each. The first 8 minutes, I'm winning 3-0. And then suddenly, like, cameras start getting behind me and stuff, and there's pictures from it. But I got nervous, and he folded under pressure, and he ended up stomping me, like, I don't know, 20-3 or something like that. Yeah, he got a kill, like, right after that and just went to town on me. But I remember it being a pretty cool moment. And there's a picture of me across from Fatality, because Fatality and Sturmy were sitting next to each other, and he has a little plush Beanie Baby or whatever on his monitor. And I don't know, it's pretty cool. So I was definitely super into esports, and I still follow it. I still watch Rafa. I really liked League of Legends as well. I'm not that great at League of Legends, but I do follow that as well. I remember I've met Reginald when TSM was popping back when they were at IPL 4, I think, it was a long time ago in Vegas. But definitely love esports.
Okay, so one thing that's actually interesting there is, like, I definitely didn't know the part about Rafa, because the thing is, Rafa is not only someone I've known a very long time, because I've been in Quake a lot as well, but I was actually, like, I used to work for SK Gaming, which is the team that he was on for a long, long time as his squad. So the thing is, from the outside, right, only knowing you in battle rap, I would never imagine, even if you two lived in the same area, you would be friends. Because as you say, Rafa is the sort of person where, like, it's so hard to even get him to, like, trash talk, the sort of enemies that beat him all the time. Even in private, he really is just legit one of the nicest guys ever, and he kind of has taken all that stuff to heart. Whereas, obviously, your outward persona is you trying to have a lot of swag, you trying to make out like you're flexing on everyone, It wouldn't seem like you'd be natural bedfellows in that sense,
Well, I'm very adaptable, and I told you, like, I was a private school kid, so I went to Catholic school my whole life through high school. So all the stuff that, at that time of his life, he's the same age as me as well. So at that time of his life, or I think he may be a year younger than me, like 10 months younger than me or something like that. But we're around the same age. And I could relate to who he was because I knew a lot of kids that were like that. But the thing is, he had one of the best mindsets of being a winner. And I liked that. I admired it about him. But I could adapt to fit in to hang out around him and fit in to hang out around different sorts of people. But really the persona that I portray on battling is very different than who I am in real life. It's something that's only it's meant to get a reaction out of people. It's meant to, kind of piss people off and go against the grain of what they want, especially when I first started, how they almost wanted me to dress like I wanted to be a black person. They want me to wear a hat and like what white people perceive to be wanting to be hip hop.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I didn't do that. And I purposely went against that. And I would tell people I don't listen to rap. And I was just being honest the whole time. But I knew in saying it, I knew I was pissing them off. Like in real life, more likely to be more tactful than that. But yeah, Rafa is somebody who I totally get along with. He's one of my best friends. He's one of the few people that I talk to from Rockford still, and it's a pretty small town, so it's funny that we didn't meet until we did, but it's a cool way that we did meet. Actually, that was the first pro gamer he ever met, was me introducing him to Rafiq.
I see. Well, one thing that's very interesting about this angle then is one of the things that is infamous in battle rap is because everyone battles everyone eventually, it's actually become almost standard. Like back in the day, if you had a source in someone's camp, and you could get some info on them, obviously you used it because it was like a gimmick, Remember, if we come from the era before even pre-written battles, you didn't know anything about the guy except what you'd seen. But it got eventually in battle rap to become a gimmick that, you try and find out, what was this guy, or what did he go to some like Christian school? Did his dad leave when he was young? Whatever the angle is, you make that to build the storyline out of, because you either want to get a reaction from them or you just want to sell the angle that like, hey, there's a weird thing about the person's past. But you must have a really good crew, because that has never come out in the two details you once said there. One, about going to like kind of like a sheltered upbringing, and secondly, about being in the esports games. That has never come out in any of the battles. How have they never found that out?
The weirdest thing is, I've told everybody. I've never been secretive about it at all, but I think that when I tell people that, yeah, when I was in high school, I used to travel around and go to gaming tournaments, it kind of sounds badass, to be honest. Like, they're like, yeah, I'm not going to use that as amp, because I'm so like outright with it. It's like, well, that's not a secret about him. Like, he's talking about it at an event. So I guess that may be why. Yeah, I don't know. I took the private school thing I brought up to people, like they didn't, I don't know, they never went with it. And I think it got to a point where, because in around 2011, 12, it was so popular to use gay jokes against me. Yes. That was what it was just like, go to, you're going to use the cheapest kind of jokes you can against him and it'll work. But then people started to hate it. So honestly, then people hated anything they said to me. If it wasn't like super hot and kind of irrelevant to me, people didn't even want to hear it. So I don't know if people just kind of strayed away from angles because of that and try to just like go more bar for bar. But I think things have changed in battling in general to kind of move away from personals. Personals were more something that was popular during the judged format, because when you have judges and someone's going to vote, and it also looks, you may not impress people on YouTube, but you might impress the judge and say, well, that was kind of tough, so I have to go with the guy who brought the dirt on the other guy. So I think it's kind of moved away from that a little bit, maybe why it's not getting brought up.
Okay. I'm amazed they didn't think that was an angle. I mean, I'm already just thinking in my own head. There's so many angles, where you bounce from the pad talking about Xbox or whatever. There's so many there's so much you could do with that. Anyone watching this, if you're a battle rapper, come on, do something good with that. There's so many great, because obviously
I would have loved that. I would have
like I alluded to before, that really would be the ultimate way to kind of like play off what your actual battle rap persona is implying that, whenever you say this, it means something in the gaming world. It seems like an obvious formula to me. But okay, on the part about like the school you went to, etc., is any of that where you were drawing from then when you did that Roan battle, where obviously you just mercilessly went on the whole Sandusky angle,
I don't know. I mean, like I know that he went to prep school too, so I guess I don't think that really drew on it. I literally went to his Twitter and saw him asking people to leave his family alone. And I was okay. So that's an actual tweet that he put out. And his sister also was tweeting. His sister was actually on like Jeopardy at some point.
Okay.
So she was on like Teen Jeopardy or College Jeopardy or something like that. She's super smart. But I remember his sister mentioning it as well. And like when those accusations came out, there was like somebody whose dad's name was Frank or something like that. Like Roan's dad's name was Frank, and it just all added up way too well. And I was like, this is obviously not true, but like, how is he tweeting that he wants people to leave his family alone? So I couldn't resist. It's kind of a cheap angle, but like I did that. And the funny thing is that I did it, and then people started saying that it's played out. I'm like, no, I'm the one that did that though. I made it true.
A lot of people did it right after that, didn't they?
Yeah. It just was like for the next 2 years, that's all he heard. But it's like when I did it, and I guess he was just maybe not feeling well that day, or I don't know if it just upset him because maybe he thought it was going to be reacted to or something like that. Because I can relate to that. There's been shit said to me where I'm like, that's not true, but I just know people are going to believe it or whatever. So, I don't know. The way he looked, I guess, made it stick to him. But I like Roan a lot. I really don't think that happened to him. But he's a good guy. I like Roan a lot.
Sure. So, okay, people know I mean, I realize the Midwest isn't right next to like Pittsburgh or whatever, but like geographically, people have to understand in battle rap, even sort of to this day, with the rare exclusions of like, St. Louis or certain places that have their own little scene, it is really just the very East Coast and then the West Coast people. And if you're in the middle, you were in sort of no man's land. And so as a result, people know each other, there's more collections. So people know you somewhat came up with Real Deal. It's a similar period of time. Was Ron actually in your circle at that time? So I know he comes from a similar area, right?
Well, him and Ron and Real Deal were good friends, and they obviously kept up a lot more. For me, I didn't keep up with him that much. After that battle, I started keeping up with him a little bit more. But he was never someone who I would, I'd have a battle I need to prepare, and I would run ideas by him, say, hey, here's what I'm going to say to him. Does that sound good? I wouldn't do that. Real Deal, yes. It was kind of random people. It was weird because there'd be people that you may not think, like Fredo. I talked to a lot. I talked to Fredo a lot. I talked to Sunny Bamboo. I didn't tell a lot of people what I was going to say, though. I'll tell you that. There wasn't a lot of people that I really trusted to that much, because I know they would tell the opponent or whatever, and there was too many clicks going on with everything. But no, Ron and I were definitely cool, but we didn't keep up that much at that time.
Were you actually as good friends with Real Deal as it appeared? Obviously, like, you guys battled each other very early on. You were the 2-on-2 partners, but some people, it's just business, or you're vaguely good friends. Like, I mean, like Thesaurus and Illmatic don't seem like they actually like hang out all the time, Immaculate or whatever, but they're clearly like friends on some level. So how close are you in Real Deal?
We're definitely good friends. I mean, I talk to him regularly still, and he's actually coming here. I live in Tampa, Florida now. He's actually coming here for a football game here in a couple weeks, so I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, no, we definitely always. I mean, I've traveled the world with him. Whether I even in the beginning, whether we were that good of friends or not. After you've gone to Australia, England, all over the U.S. and Canada with somebody, because even when we weren't doing 2-on-2s, we got booked at the same events all the time. Right. So it's like, if realistically, especially early on, they'd be looking to try to save money. They're like, all right, well, we're going to get a 2-bed hotel and it's going to be you and Real Deal. I'm like, all right, that's cool, whatever, because I'm cool with them. So doing that with somebody, you obviously become friends, traveling around and stuff like that. But he's one of the funniest guys I've ever met. He's hilarious, good guy to drink with, amazing battler, and just overall good dude. So yeah, me and Real Deal are definitely good friends.
Okay, so the time when I actually became aware of battle rap as like a proper thing, like, here's the thing. I think I actually, a long time ago, because I've been on the internet a long fucking time, I think I had been linked to maybe like, one of those original Smack ones. But if I'm honest, I didn't think that was like it didn't have any draw for me, especially because so much of it was like, it wasn't specific to the opponent. Half the time they were doing arguably what T-Rex still does now, where you're just spitting all your mixtape bars, but you're pretending like it's some sick shit you're coming up with, It's like there was a lot of gimmicks back then that weren't that cool. So I remember I actually first became aware of battle rap properly around the time when it was called Jump Off, which, I mean, if people might know, led into Don't Flop, basically, where it was archaic, and they had a world championship, and they were like Team UK or whatever. And before there was Respect BA and those guys as well. And then that led, not that long after that, I remember, I'd looked for like the same names or something, and I saw that Grindtime had started up, and then that obviously was like, it was fairly similar to, if people know KOTD, King of the Dot, it's like that basically with a different company and just a few years back. So admittedly, the metagame of what you do in rap is very different, but similar setup. Now, obviously, that's where you really like blew up, where your name got out there, because you got to face a lot of these, like, obviously there was a lot of big West Coast rappers involved in that league. Now, during this point in time, you alluded to it earlier on the interview, right? You purposely, at the time, a lot of people wanted to have like a theme or a gimmick. And your gimmick basically was like, I'm the sort of person who would never be a battle rapper, because everyone else, as you say, was either actually African-American and did come from the hood, in which case they were either playing on that or sometimes exaggerating it, and like they're actually a nice guy, but they're selling drugs and killing everyone, the usual, what people would expect from battle rap. Or it was, as you mentioned, it'd be a guy where you'd be sort of squinting at the screen, you'd go, I'm sure he's definitely white, but then he'd be pretending as though he was like that, like maybe in his raps he just says it's the homies that kill everyone or something, but he would have on the backwards baseball cap, and he'd have like the oversized T-shirt, you know, they would be going for basically, like you were saying, that stereotype, which was the other thing you were allowed to be. But you were billing yourself from the beginning as sort of like, I mean, you definitely exaggerated because you almost made it like you were a teeny bopper or something. You know, you were like a preppy kid, or you were wearing like, you know.
I was straightening my hair and shit back then.
Yes,
I remember
exactly.
like in the beginning I was like a fucking emo band person or something. I don't really know.
Was that who you were at the time?
It really was. No, that's what I was really doing at that time. When I started battling, I was 19, 20. I did freestyle battles and stuff like that first. So I won all the freestyle tournaments in Chicago and Milwaukee, and then I qualified for Scribble Jam and lost to Saurus, and he ended up winning that year. And then I got into Grindtime after that. But at that time, I was still like 20 years old, and I don't know why that was the thing at the time. I don't know. So I was straightening my hair and looking super emo. But that was really who I was. So I was like, I'm just going to be myself in the battle. I'm not going to like shy away from it whatsoever. And it didn't do me any favors. Believe me, in the beginning, it really hurt me. I could have done much better and moved up much more quickly if I would have tried to be more middle ground. I don't know, but I still don't regret it. I think overall it was good because people really looked back on the content of what I was saying and looked at it for what it was and realized there was quality there. And then it was kind of funny. Like I like never gone to the gym before. I went to the gym for like 2 months and I did a battle against Big Cannon and Young Cannon with Real Deal. And I was saying the gun bars and stuff that I always said. And I maybe gained like 10 pounds total, like max 10 pounds of higher than what I was in my previous battle. But it was like a whole different world of people accepting what I was saying just by nature of me being a little bit bigger. Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do it again. And I gained a little bit more weight. And then I gained a little bit more weight. And it was like the more muscle I put on, the more believable I became. People didn't any threatening stuff or tough things that I said, people wanted to hear it from me. So it's kind of an odd thing, but I've always, that was at any time you've seen me, I have like changed from battle to battle over the years, especially because there's been a lot of gaps, but it's always been who I am, you know, in real life at that time.
Okay, so as you alluded to wind it back a bit there, like because this was your outward appearance, and to be fair, at that era, I mean, people always joke about it, I notice now, a lot of the King of the Dot people, but it was kind of like the writing back then, because it was the early era of people actually writing their bars, there were a lot of really lazy, like basically like, haha, you're gay to anyone, you know, everyone just got that, and like the punchline for everything was the F word, you know, like, it's like, there was a lot of like lazy writing like that, but obviously you got it worse than everyone, because when you were saying there, like, you could have done better, I mean, the one that immediately springs to mind for me is that Kid Twist battle. Because in theory, in the Kid Twist battle, it should be a neutral ground. He's also a nerdy white guy, and he's from fucking Canada at that. So, if anything, you should have had the edge on him. And in that battle, I think most people, if they go back now and rewatch, I think even Kid Twist would probably admit you won that one. But he basically wins it just because all his haymakers are just sort of like, the guy's gay. And for some reason, back then, people's minds, I mean, maybe our mindsets had to evolve as well. But back then, that really was like a haymaker KO in time, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, no, and he even told me that day that he thought that I won, and I remember the judging and being really upset with it because they had 2 Canadian judges, and the judging went 2 for me and 3 for overtime, and the Canadian judges, one of them was Lopeshi. They're like, yeah, I think Fresco got that, but it was so close after he had that last bar. I got to see overtime, and I'm like, wait, so if 2 said that I won and 3 wanted overtime, that means we have to do overtime, which is fine, but like, I don't know, it just. That upset me at the time. I remember being very pissed off about that. But he was like, yeah, I felt like you had the edge or whatever. I think he said it in his interview, post-battle interview or whatever, that I was edging him in 3 or whatever. But yeah, no, that was a powerful mechanic back then. It definitely worked for sure. Another side note that you probably don't know is that last year I bought and owned Grindtime and sold it.
Okay, why?
Just because I wanted to, I guess. I don't know. I moved here to Florida because I wanted to get into sales and software sales specifically. Now I run a startup, but at the time, there's a battle rapper by the name of Word of Play. You may not have seen him, but he is somebody who I was browsing through his Instagram at 4 a.m, and I saw that he had a Breitling on, and 2 of his employees had Rolexes on. And the company that he worked for at the time, they would give out Rolexes. So I was like, what do you do? Can I get an interview? And I moved here like a couple of months later. I started working for that company, moved up to that company to be a director of sales, and then I branched off and did something else. But he brought me into that, and it was, I forgot where I was going. Where I was going to this at the beginning.
You owned Grindtime.
Oh, right. No, he found out that Grindtime was for sale.
Right.
And so he and I bought it together. So we both bought Grindtime from Matt Ills and then sold it to King of the Dot.
Ah, okay.
Before that, though, we bought iBattle and sold it to Lex Luthor, who now runs iBattle. I don't know if you've ever seen iBattle. It's not as popular. One, right? Yeah. It's a smaller one. But we had done that first, and then when we thought about it, like, dude, we could buy Grindtime as well. And we thought, like, you know, we have this footage. We could probably do something with it.
Was that the main thing to sell it for? Was like the archive of all the old battles and stuff?
Right, for re-releases and stuff like that. But then the more I thought about it, I'm like, I don't really feel like messing with any of this stuff. Like, I don't want to have to try and figure out I don't know. I'm not going to try to figure out how to make money off this stuff, even though it's my footage. That it was mainly, I'm like, this is my footage. I would kind of like want to own it, you know? It's kind of cool to say I do and I can, so I'm going to buy it. And then I was like, I'm not going to do anything with this. And so I got rid of it. But just kind of a fun tidbit that I did own Grindtime for a brief time there.
Okay. So is it not true? Because this is one of the things I heard. So obviously there were a couple of periods in your career where you had a while away from battling. Like you had these gaps where you didn't battle. And, you know, in theory at the time, you were still one of the bigger names. You probably could have booked battles. A lot of other people, I mean, Real Deal's a good example. Just they seem to do them all the time. I don't even know when they ever get time off, but they just take every battle, it seems like. Was it true that one of the reasons why is because you did get disillusioned by the fact that since every single angle was like, this guy's gay, it felt like it was just like, you know, the odds were against you, or like people had a cheap way out against you? Because that was like even though there's many people where they use the same angle, this is one of the most famous that everyone used that angle against you.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being pretty annoyed by it. I was like, I knew that I was more clever, or I would say things, but honestly, yes, that's correct. It was something to do with that. I was really annoyed with that, but at the same time, looking back, it was kind of a weak mindset to be in, because there were minor things I could have tweaked with delivery, and I didn't realize this until a lot later. Like, I watched Big K, who actually changed my ideas on a lot of things in battling, because Big K is somebody who could say something that's not even that good.
His delivery's fire, though, isn't it?
But he says
believe everything.
It's like, that wasn't even. I would have thrown that away. But the way he said it made me realize that that's actually a hot line, and I should not throw that away. So that actually made me change, and there's a transformation from my young ill battle to my thesaurus battle is a major difference. So I'm going from throwing up on stage to having the best battle of my career, because I realized something about delivery that I could never see before. It was like a eureka moment when it happened. But there were things back then originally I could have done, and I was disillusioned about, you know, the angles people took on me and stuff like that, but I kind of regret it a little bit just because it was a weak thing to do.
Okay. So one thing you touched on before, which was kind of like how even just physically getting a little bit more built, a bit more toned, helped kind of people buy the angle that, you know, you're a tough guy or you're flexing on someone in a line. But before that, this was another angle, which funnily enough coincided with the era where everyone was using the lame angle against you, which was when you started doing a lot of your best material was the gun bars, basically. Like you basically had material that if you'd been on Smack and you were African-American would be straight fire. It would be all the Don DeMarcos, you know, all that shit. But because you were a white guy and you were doing it on King of the Dot, or probably the most ridiculous example was when you came to Don't Flop. And obviously people already, you know, don't always get the lingo. But there was people, the battle I remember most clearly, this one, was obviously that final of Uno Laves and O'Shea, where some of your lines in that one, I remember like the part about like being like Donatello and the cultured in the sculpture and all that. We did the whole like Renaissance scheme was an amazing scheme, and I'm not even joking. Like, bear in mind, you know, remember they tried to record like the crowd pretty loud, so if the crowd do any noise, it make it. You could have heard a fucking pin drop in there. I was remember watching this video, being like, does nobody get that? Is nobody a battle rap fan in here? Like, for some reason at that time, it didn't matter how good the lines were or the scheme. It didn't hit, did it?
No, it definitely didn't hit, but I knew it wasn't going to hit, and I still wanted to do it. That was the weird thing, is I'm like, I just know that on replay value, the fact that it's not even hitting, I don't know. At that time, I was kind of over winning. I'm like, there's going to be battles and I'm not going to win them. The only thing I felt bad about in that was that Real Deal was attached to it and it was a finals for money and everything.
Sure.
They ended up splitting the money with us anyway because they knew it was kind of bogus that they won. Because I was like, look, they're not good. We're going to say some stuff that's good. And then I'm going to throw this in as filler, but it's fire. So I'm like, this is something that I had, but it's a little segment of 12 bars or whatever about the Renaissance and utilities or whatever I wrote. But I remember that, and I'm like, this is fire, I have that, so we're on a time crunch too because we don't know who we're going to face next. So I'm like, well, let's just throw that in there just to fill up some time in the round or whatever. But I knew it wasn't going to pop. I knew it wasn't going to get a crazy crowd reaction. I just wanted to do it anyway because I knew that on YouTube, on replay, people would be like, that was hot. I knew that we'd someday, look at right now, someday 10 years later or whatever, we're having an interview about it and we're talking about that moment. I specifically remember being in the parking lot of whatever bar we were at or pub we were at and saying I was going to use that because I knew it would get some attention on replay.
Was it the case then? Like when did that mentality develop of like, like people will catch it when they watch it again, or like, who cares what the actual result here is? I mean, the fans can decide sort of, because I noticed that a lot of people now have that mentality, but they only got it in the last few years. Like I noticed, to be fair, it's mostly the people who have the really good pens. They're like, right, whatever, if this doesn't land here, they know like the nerds at home who are going to watch it 5 times, they're going to get it. And then they're going to know if that was a really sick line. When did you sort of develop this mentality?
I think I always had it a little bit, but it was when I guess people started, I noticed that they weren't getting it, but then I would read comments and people were like, that was fire, what you said. So kind of around the time of the SoulCon battle, I guess, probably was when it happened, but I later figured out that I needed to minimize it a little bit. Like I definitely still do it. In the last couple battles, I've had things that I'm like, you kind of narrow it down to a point where maybe only 2 people get it in the room, but online a bunch of people will get it. I like doing that still, but I realize that's not going to win you any battles, and it really doesn't. The main thing is I look at it now like, could I put this on for a random person? Could I put it on for a middle-aged woman, and would she find something entertaining about it? Could I put it on for a teenage kid and would he find something entertaining about it? So it's got to be attractive to people from all walks of life, and it never really truly will be because it's battle rap and it is what it is, but you want to try to as much as you can. But I still do like having that. Like you obviously picked up on the esports stuff and the gaming stuff that I mentioned about ninja diffuses and the blue buff in League of Legends. Yeah, exactly.
The Windows cleaver,
yeah, stuff like that. I like doing that so people kind of get a taste of my real personality and who I am. So things that I know about and things that I'm interested in, like I like to include that somehow, whether how small it may be, to have it in there for a little bit. But I know that it's got to be a minor part at this point.
Okay. So as you said before, I mean, you talked about some of the things you did, like listening to Big K's delivery, actually trying to work out so you look a little bit more intimidating. But even beyond just you, like it's definitely noticeable in your career because, as I say, you're doing some of those similar schemes and setups and lines and same type of lyricism, but now it's all hitting. But also I've noticed actually it has also been a bit of a sea change in battle rapping generally. Like, for example, probably here's got to be the test case example. The fact that Sharon can now unironically do gun bars. Yeah. And people love it. Dude, he even went on Smack and people were loving it. Like, that really just shows we're in a different world now, aren't we?
Absolutely. I actually talked to Sharon today. He's thinking about moving to Florida. But yeah, I mean, it would not fly. I couldn't do it in a room full of people who should have loved me. People that were like my exact demographic that I should be going for, they fucking hated it because it was talking about guns or drugs or whatever. But now it's like you need to. And honestly, it's the reason why it's so cool is because there's so many different slang words for it, and like allows for creative wordplay and for creativity to kind of happen in that space, because that's what hip hop is. There's a lot of slang words for things that really don't need the slang words for them, but we just have it. So that's what makes it fun. And you can say some pretty cold bars from coming up with, I don't know, different ways to use that. So even Sharon now is using it, which I think is cool because I mean, there's really no difference between Sharon and I. There's not that much of a difference.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But I just started doing it when it wasn't safe to do it.
Yes. Okay, so what about this then? So in the past, when you would have those moments in those battles, like the one I said, the Renaissance Spate, or some of the other ones you've done along those lines. I remember you had some other good stuff when you came to the UK, where it was about the part about like people getting the bars because like you get more reception when they recharge it or something. It's like an allusion to a scheme about mobile phone, basically. And like I say, a lot of these lines, no matter how good they were, those were actually the parts that didn't hit. Like the part that you might just say is like the lyricism part that anyone can appreciate, it's fast or rhymes. People would get that in the crowd, right? What about this then? Because I've noticed those used to be my favorite bits, but even people who did that sort of thing, because as you're saying, it doesn't always hit in the room because it might be too complicated or someone can't hear it all. People used to only like sprinkle a bit of that into their round, you know. The rest of it would be like, that would be like a key part, but then you'd move on. I've noticed your style now and why you've been having a lot of success when we think of like the Saurus battle and the QP battle. It's almost the whole round's like that now. Like you've figured out kind of your blueprint, right? And you've got the formula. I mean, it's a lot of similes and you just, whatever you did in terms of delivery, it's working on all the parts. And now the whole round can be like that in a way.
Yeah. I mean, similes definitely help. That's for sure. And I didn't even realize how much I used them as a crutch in that last battle until people pointed it out.
It's almost every second line is one, right? It's like whatever it is, it's like this. And it's all sick, but it's the same formula.
Yeah. I didn't even realize that until after the battle. But I remember preparing for that one. And I remember the people that I talked to, like Jeffrey and Eric Foreman and Word to Play, the people that I talked to and share my battles with, mainly was Jeffrey and Word to Play at the time. And I was at Word's house telling them the bars, and I remember they weren't really reacting to them when I was telling them. This is like a day before we left because we all went to that event together. I'm like, all right, so these guys, I'm like, I don't have time to rewrite everything. I thought it was hot when I wrote it. So what I really have to do is just up the delivery and just completely control everything. So that's what I did. And I really think that bar for bar, like the Saurus battle is clearly like way better than the QP battle, but I did a much better job of controlling the crowd and being animated and delivering in the QP battle, right? Which made some of the material that probably wasn't as good hit a little bit harder. But yeah, I mean that formula has definitely carried the last couple battles, especially the last one.
When you'd had the Thesaurus battle, like as much as you've had great battles before and since, like that does seem like a standout one because that's one of the ones where, first of all, replay value, everyone was going nuts over it. But obviously in the room, it worked really, really well. Now, one thing I want to ask you about actually is, so one thing, if someone's never watched battle rap before and they watch that battle, is they will think like, wow, even the other battle rappers giving it up to him because Thesaurus is like giving you a lot of props. But what they don't know, and this is something I've noticed a lot of like casual fans aren't aware of, is the reason Thesaurus does that is, first of all, he is obviously like, he's barhead, he loves great lines, you know, but he actually does that as sort of defense, you know, he does that to sort of downplay the line as if like, yeah, cool, like that, move on to the next one, you know, like that really is his style against everyone, if you notice. So yeah,
it kind of cuts off the love.
It's clever in a way, yeah, because he kind of makes it like, hey, even I'm acknowledging, right, we can go to the next line now, whereas, you know, maybe if it was like URL, for example, that'd last like 30 seconds, you see how terrible they are for having to restart there. So what did you think of the reaction you got in this one? Like, could you tell you were sort of zoned in and it was all hitting?
Oh, I definitely knew that it was all hitting. That's a battle that had history because like I told you, when I started with freestyle battling, like the first battle I did was in Rockford. It was a freestyle battle. I didn't expect to beat anybody, and I ended up beating out of 16 people. I ended up winning. So that let me go to Chicago, where I won that out of 16 people and beat this guy who was on BET at the time. His name was Sam I Am. He was on BET at the time. He was on MTV2 against Dizaster, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to beat this guy. So I beat him. And then I went to Milwaukee and beat everybody. And then I went to, since I qualified, I went to Scribble Jam and faced some Seal Fresh, who was actually from Chicago too. First round, beat him. Then I faced Thesaurus, who I literally learned how to rap by watching Thesaurus's videos. Sure. Like, no joke, I watched jump off videos and learned how to rap from watching Thesaurus and Kid Twist. Those are my two favorite guys. I watched them, I figured out what they did, and I tried to add that to, but specifically Thesaurus, because the way that he phrased things. And I figured out he had a way of phrasing things that was hard hitting. Yeah. And I really liked that, and it was clever. So when I faced him, I knew I couldn't win as Scribble Gem, even though I probably could have done better. And I actually did well against him. But in my head, I knew there's no way I can beat the guy that I've just been watching for the past year. You know what I mean? So he ended up winning that. And then all these years later, I still was mad because he's the first person that ever beat me. I mean, I was beating everybody. I had never lost. And then I faced the Saurus. So I was like, all right, when I face the Saurus, I'm not fucking around. Like, I'm going to get everything together, make sure that, I'm on point. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely was happy about doing that battle. I was excited to do it. And the creativity flowed, I guess. I don't know. I was ready to go.
It's interesting you say you learned to rap from Thesaurus, because when you say that, I'd never thought about it, but I can see some similarities in the style, because one of the things about Thesaurus' style that I think is pretty underrated is when he tries to deliver a really fire bar, if you notice, he tends to like put a break in the middle of it, so there's sort of time for you to hear all the words, put the concept together, and it can actually land in the room as well. Like a lot of people, I notice a lot of the people who say like, oh, I've got an amazing pen. It's like the problem with that, mate, is like I even had to think about when I was watching the video, like I wouldn't have got that if I was in the room, I had to think, what does he mean by that? Oh, it's an allusion to that reference or slang or something. So I can sort of see a bit of that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that he does that I don't think he even maybe to this day doesn't realize is this phrasing is really good. So like when I come up with any kind of punchline, I'm thinking about the sounds of the syllables before I'm even thinking of the words. I'm thinking about like phonetic sounds and how they hit. And he doesn't do that all the time. But the times that I really liked what he was saying, he was doing that. So I copied that, but I didn't take it when he did it. There's something that I call Canadian rhyming. Okay. And I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example of it, but Canadians rhyme things that don't rhyme. They'll they'll rhyme something like with mime. But they'll do it in a multi, and and I don't mind slant rhyming in a multi, but the last syllable to me has to be a perfect one. Okay. You can, like, if it's going to be like, it better be Mike or bike. You can't do lime.
Yes.
But Canadians will do lime. And sometimes Thesaurus will do that and doesn't really realize that. And I was like, all of your best hitting stuff has always hit on the last syllable and been connected in, I don't know, in a certain way that kind of seems seamless. Like my multis don't really seem like I'm doing multis like he does, because it's very obvious when he's doing them. When I do them, I'm doing 7 and 8 syllable multis in my rhymes, and nobody knows me as the multi guy. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But whereas that's kind of his shtick. So I like to do it, but it's kind of seamless, or maybe not as more effortless. I don't know. I don't want to like make it sound like I'm doing it perfectly, but I think that it's not as noticeable when I do it. But that's the main thing I picked up from him.
Along these lines, it's actually just made me think of something that I do sometimes. It's one of those thoughts you only ever have when you're watching a battle and you just forget afterwards. So one thing I have always found funny is it would make sense in King of the Dot if there's some nerdy stuff, because obviously a lot of the battle rappers are Canadian or they're American, but they're white, they're not from URL. But even on URL, I've noticed, despite the fact the imagery that we're all working with is like gangster rap and basically like the guy who sells the most drugs, fucks the most people's bitches, like has the best guns, he's the coolest guy. That's what we're all trying to be in some context. Now, sure, if you are a white guy from Canada, you've got to just metaphorically be that, you can't actually really imply you are that, like some people will. But the funny thing is, even the people who do that on URL, like a T-Rex type guy, perfect example of that sort of guy, even they love to throw in lines that are about nerd culture, like fucking comic books or a video game, and the crowd always goes apeshit. Like if you reference, like if T-Rex did the sickest gun bars ever, but then ended on some sort of like, and then I shot my dogs, I had to shoot my own dogs, like, Tomb Raider on the PlayStation, people would go fucking mental. But that is actually so far from the actual ethos of like gangster culture. It's a bit of a bizarre sort of contrast, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's really like a wrestling fan base, comic book fan base, anything to do with video games. I mean, that really is the core of battle rap fans, no matter how much they may want to be that gangster person, but deep down, that fan who you don't become a huge, like if you're really a gangster and you are selling drugs and actually killing people or whatever, we claim to do in these battles, you don't really have time to sit down and look at a rap battle.
Sure.
You know what I mean? You're not a fan of it. The people who like that maybe want to have that image or aspire to be like that person. Yeah, maybe just think it's cool. Maybe like that's somebody they look up to, but they would never really do it because they're too afraid. But they're really wrestling fans, they're video game fans, they're comic book fans, and those have always been the hardest hitting lines, and they go together so perfectly. That's the funny thing, is how perfectly they can go together, and when it happens, it's awesome.
So in line with that then, I will ask you a question which 10 years ago would have sounded like the stupidest question you could ask Fresco ever, which is, why has Fresco not been on Smack? Because obviously in the past, you would have been laughed out the building, but at this point in time, it seems like your style would go down really well. I even think if you saw the way Sharon was received, where he sort of like acknowledged, like, yeah, I'm obviously not like African-American, but he sort of went with it, he did really well. He beat a guy who, was one of the people that people were going crazy for.
I think it'd be easy to win on Smack. I think it's really easy, actually, especially because I know that my image and everything will shock factor the crowd. The thing is that I just don't battle that often. I haven't done anything since QP, and I may do one. I was talking to Organic a little bit recently about doing the Decade event for King of the Dot, but it's just that I haven't been battling much, so I don't know if I will or not. I may not. I want to, but at the same time, I don't want to. I've been busy running this business and everything, so it's just kind of a tough thing. Before that, I was working at another company, and I was running a team, and I was hiring and firing people. I couldn't do that. It was a very corporate situation where I couldn't battle for that time. Now I'm out of that, but I've just been so busy that I don't know if I'll have time to do it or not, but I would like to at least go back and do the King of the Dot Decade event. Right. And URL, if I continued battling, would definitely be something on my agenda. It's just something that I have to decide, am I going to do this or not? I'm 30 years old now. I feel like I'm 30. Am I really still a rapper? I don't know. Maybe not. I know that, truthfully, as far as skill goes, I don't think that there's very many people who are better than me, but I also think it's I'm at a point in my life where it's kind of a tough decision. Do I really want to spend my time doing that? Because it takes up a lot of mental energy, even when I'm not writing it. The fact that it's hanging over your head, that someone is writing for you, especially being me at the situation I'm in right now, where they know if I come back, it's going to be very anticipated. So they're going to be writing their ass off for 60 days, 30 days, whatever it may be, where I've never been able to do that. I can maybe start the week before, and then I can, start actually putting some stuff together. And the first 2 days of it are all garbage, and I throw it all away. And then I start coming up with some okay stuff. But like that hanging over my head that entire time, I just feel like almost depressed about it. Like I'm like, oh my God, I got to do this battle. Why did I agree to this? Why am I even doing this? So I haven't been wanting to put myself through that stress lately, just with the other stuff that's going on. But if I do come back and I do decide to do it, I definitely do need to do a Smack battle, because that'd be an easy win and a lot of views.
Did you not have the same like reverence for the Smack? I mean, if you say you came up and you knew the Saurus and people like that, it's like that's the different style, different coast. Were you never that driven to want to be with the Loaded Luxes of the world and the Murder Mooks, etc.?
No, I liked those guys a lot, actually. I really liked both of them. I liked Mook. I liked Lux. I liked Reed Dallas a lot. Reed Dallas was my favorite. Okay. I really liked Philly rappers. Everybody from Philly. I like Cicero, and I would watch Frank with the Grippers. I don't know if you know who that is. It's he was Reed Dallas' hype man who had this 2 front teeth missing. Okay. He's in all the videos like hyping up his every punchline or whatever. But yeah, no, I liked that. I did like Smack rappers. Bill Collector was one of my favorite guys. He ended up dissing me after one of my battles or something, but I still like Bill Collector a lot. I think he's funny. But yeah, when I was beginning, I definitely preferred the Thesauruses and stuff like that, but I still did like some of the Smack guys.
Okay. Right. What do you think of, since you said about the QP battle earlier, right, that's a topic I want to talk to you about. Okay, so obviously you've more recently been associated with QP, where you were in that group with him, Innuendo. Now, he's someone where he's had his own weird journey himself, because it reminds me of yours a bit, because at the beginning he also had a claim in his own, he was obviously going the nerd route himself. He had a different angle on it, and then I can't tell if part of it is, I know he had a lot of like personal life problems with drugs and all sorts of crazy shit, I can't tell how much of it is that, but there was a time where, even though I've always been a fan of people who had really good pens, basically, and so I used to watch all his battles, even in the middle period when it felt like he went a little bit off the reservation, like some of the battles, I can't tell if he just went like too in depth on them and I couldn't follow him down the rabbit hole, or if they actually had gotten not as good. But especially about the time he did your battle, and maybe like a year or two before, he really came back into form and got very, very good again. But it still feels like there's still something missing with him. Like, he doesn't fully land with like all the crowds. Like, sometimes they miss really great bars he has. He seems to currently be in that stage where, the people online love it and are like, wow, amazing performance. What do you think of him as a rapper? How did you get to know him? And what would you say about his style in that sense?
I think QP actually invented the stop pause. And
right.
mentioned that. I really think that. So when I hear Nicki Minaj say it's going down, basement, which is trash, by the way, but I hear it, or whatever, I hear that on songs and in music. I did not know anyone doing that before him, and I think Conceited kind of took it and made it even bigger. But he made up the stop pause. I never heard it. People say, well, there was an example of it on one song from 1989 or something. Like, okay, give me a break. He was doing it repeatedly.
That was his style, yeah.
Yeah, I loved that. As far as him and his journey through battling, I don't think he's really had as many problems as it seems like. QP is a pimp, and I don't say that in as a figure of speech. He's actually a pimp. I don't really... Okay. I mean, I thought he had two girlfriends. When I battled him, I was like, you got two girlfriends or whatever. He doesn't have two girlfriends. These girls work for him. I didn't know that at the time. I'm like, holy shit, I'm seeing this dude. And this isn't a secret, by the way. This is all over his own Facebook and his own Snapchat and stuff like that. I think he's doing okay. And I think, I mean, for him, and that's what he wants to do. So, but he's got his journey that he's doing. I seen him, what you're talking about, where he kind of like in the middle was kind of a little weird, and then he kind of came back really strong. I think he's never really fully understood the crowd mentality and the entire audience. He's understood some of the audience and never really understood maybe or has cared about the audience that's in person. Like, remember when I said I had that epiphany about Big K and realizing delivery and stuff like that? Maybe he hasn't had that, but he's very talented. I mean, he really is good, and he's a great writer. And it might also be because when you're like QP, even myself, I haven't battled in so long. I get offers all the time to battle, and there's cash associated with that. And it may be more that he wants to just say, hey, let me just travel out here, do the battle. I'll write some pretty good stuff, and it is what it is, but maybe he's not super excited to battle that person. Sure. It takes a lot for me to get excited to face someone. So even right now, the prospect of me coming back, me considering who the opponent may be, is kind of making me doubt the fact that I might do it, because I'm like, who would really inspire me to elevate myself to that level, to write something that I think is quality enough that I'd want people to see. So I don't know, maybe some of that, and then also some of maybe he hasn't realized that, but he definitely has the potential, and he's definitely somebody who changed entirety of battle rap by some of the style things that he did.
If people notice a theme, and this obviously ties into what we just said about QP and your own journey, a theme that happens in people's careers, because we're talking now about people who've been rappers for 10 years, 15 years, and they're going through eras, not only of like general rap and what people want to hear, but then they're going through their own evolution. One of the themes here is that wherever you start and whatever you're good at the beginning, you have to change, because if you keep doing one thing, you become one-dimensional, But at the same time, it's like everyone goes through a different journey and ends up somewhere different. And I notice in the end, it reminds me a bit of in games, actually. In games, okay, there will always be a general meta game. And this is like generally, like what people think is the best way to play a hero in League of Legends, or a style in Counter-Strike, or whatever it might be. But even if there's a general style that, like if you were making a robot, you'd tell it this is like the best style to do to win. That doesn't usually apply to most people, There's someone that applies to, but usually you become the best, or at least as good as you can be. You have to sort of figure out your own style and then be the best at that, right?
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. I mean, oh, did I just sign out here?
No, I can still hear you.
Okay, we're good. No, I think that's pretty true. I mean, you can't be somebody else, and you only get so far being somebody else. You got to definitely do your own style and try to do that. I just was randomly. I apologize for daydreaming while you were talking a little bit, and I was remembering. I wanted to ask you if there's a player that you remember. He's also from Rockford. His name is Da Bears.
Yes,
he's
actually still around now.
Oh, really? What does he do now?
He's not a player anymore. Now he does like I don't know if he still does, but he was coaching like the best female team in Counter-Strike where they have like their own exhibition tournaments and stuff, and then he sometimes on like a lower level does like a bit like what I do, like goes to the events and is like the analyst at halftime or whatever, who breaks the game down. So he's still around a little bit actually. Yeah. A very famed player from the 1.6. They're a funny guy as well.
Yeah, very funny. I was really good friends with his younger brother. I mean, I played with him a little bit, but he was my favorite player because I looked up to. He was like a lot older than me when we played Counter-Strike, and he was already in Cali. I remember I was like watching all of his stuff. I'd be on his IRC channels and stuff, following him. I'm trying to think who else that I knew really well. Do you know Sapphire?
Yes, there's a female player.
Yeah, her brother
she's still around as well.
Her brother was John. He was
a Source player.
Yeah.
Juan.
So Juan was my really good friend. He's from Milwaukee, which is about an hour away. So Juan, Nick Knowit, Paradox were my really good friends. And then Helix and AC were on Verge Gaming with Juan before they joined 3D. So then Helix and AC and I went and played on Green Berets with James. And before that CPL that we went to for Saurus, James ended up cutting me for a guy named Lucky Ted. I don't know if you remember who Lucky Ted is.
By the way, James is still around. He was actually a coach a couple of years ago.
Really? That's crazy. Well, I don't like him because he cut me before that tournament. He found out my computer wasn't getting 100 FPS and I was the opper. Okay. So he's like, I'm going to bring in Lucky Ted. And it just so happened at that time, I got in a fight with this guy named Sphere, who you probably don't know. Okay. But he was the one financing this whole trip for us to go, paying for everybody to go, and him and I got in a big argument. So it was like, all right, I'm kind of out of here. And then he got Lucky Ted in there. But that was just random side note, thinking of some more game stuff.
Luckily, I do remember a lot of the players, so I do know some of those names you mentioned. Okay, what about this then? So when you alluded to there, like obviously, yes, some of the people who travel a lot. I mean, the most famous example, because it's even an angle people use against me, is DNA, who, when you take as many battles as DNA has, you're obviously not writing all the material for these. It's definitely not all your best stuff, Like, you definitely wait until you get, like, the big battle before you do all the great lines. You're using some of your throwaways on the one that's, like, a low card one where you fill in for someone, But here's the question, right? So another angle that's been built into the persona of the rappers is not only, do I have the best guns and the best win, but it's like, but I'm getting paid more than you for this battle. And then what they love to do as well nowadays is drop like a number, like, oh, I'm getting paid 40 stacks for this. And it's like, I thought, here's the thing, Fresco, unlike other people where like part of me doesn't even want to know the real numbers because it sounds cool. I like to believe Murder Mook really does get 40k every time. But my problem is this, because I'm in esports and for some of our live events, we can get like 1 million unique viewers watching the event, and I know roughly how much the event costs to put on, and I know like what the marketing aspect is, and I know what I get paid and what the player gets paid. It doesn't seem plausible that anyone's getting paid 40k for any battle basically ever. I don't care if you've got a pay-per-view, unless you basically own Smack and you would just Smack decide to battle. I can't see how anyone could be getting that. So like, how far off is the ballpark? You don't have to give us like the exact numbers. Obviously,
I'll tell you the exact numbers. If I was going to do a battle today, I'd get paid $2,000. I'd get a flight, I'd get a hotel.
It's a lot less than people imply then, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not Loaded Lux or Murder Mook who might be able to negotiate to get more money to the point where they will not the league is not going to make money on Mook or Lux.
That's just like the headliner loss leader where
they're going to okay. Yep, exactly. That's what it's for. They will absolutely sell out the event in New York if they do it in New York. Will absolutely sell out on head count. They do charge for VIP and stuff like that. So they'll make a good amount of that money back from the door. And then when you add in views and pay-per-view sales, they may make it back. But I'll tell you the truth is that the people who own URL won the lottery, literally. They actually won the lottery. I don't remember which one of them Chico or Beasley or somebody. No, it wasn't Beasley.
Okay.
One of them actually literally won the lottery, and Smack was dead. It was completely dead. Grind Time was popping. One of them won the lottery and brought back Smack as URL. And
right.
They were actually paying some people some ridiculous amounts for certain things. Now, I don't know what all people make, but I know for a fact it's not that crazy. And my numbers are just realistic for me. And I don't think that there's too many people making that much more than that. You know what I mean?
Makes sense.
Now, a guy like Arsenal, who gets 1 million views on every battle, a guy like Loaded Lux or Murda Mook, they'll definitely make more than me. Hands down. I don't know. I don't see anybody getting paid $40,000 for a battle though for 10 minutes of rapping. I really don't.
Sure.
I mean, that's like half of a advance. Like if a record label gave you a record deal, they give like $100,000 advance, and they're going to pay him half of that practically for a 10-minute battle. Probably not.
Because along those lines then, now that people have a sense of like, you know, what's realistic in this world, if you come back and you do a battle then, so okay, in their case, if you are Murda Mook, if you are Loaded Lux, like what you're trying to sell as your angle is like, I'm only going to come back if you pay me a lot and if it's like some epic shit, you know, and that's like a clever way to make it like, well, since none of them, by the way, message to all URL rappers, none of you are undefeated, but I know they all try to pretend like they are, you know, they never lost, because sadly that's what happens when you don't judge any battles. So when they do that, right, and they're like, I'd only come back for this much, they make it seem as though, you know, it's not even to battle that person, he's not as good as me. In your case, obviously it's not some insane amount of money, like you'd have to drop everything. If you come back, it's because it's the right battle then, yeah?
Oh yeah, I couldn't care less about the money. The money doesn't even really mean anything, just the fact that I don't want to make no money because I don't want some other person to make more than me, so sure. I'm going to get paid something to do it. But I don't care about the money. Is trivial to me completely. I don't care about that at all. It would just be because I want to do it strictly because of that.
Since you referenced him, I thought a good person to ask you about them would be Arsenal. So here's the thing. Arsenal has, as everyone knows, the most views of all time or whatever. You have so many battles that have insane amounts of views. At this point, people can't even like fuck with him as an angle because it's like on all different networks, you know. The guy really has done it. But one of the things I've always found kind of bizarre about him as a layman, someone who doesn't do battle raps, I don't really know all the mechanics of it, you know, I'm just a fan who picked things up over the years, is I even enjoy watching Arsenal battles, but if you actually asked me to name like 5 hot lines Arsenal ever said, I mean, I've got a very good memory and I might struggle to get to 3 because, I mean, his style's not really about, like, the writing's not even very good, is it? A lot of it is like almost filler, but can it explain it to me? Explain Arsenal to me. How does it seem so good? Because it does. I can't lie.
Because he says weird shit in a good way. He's got one of the hottest deliveries. Some of the shit that he says, like, it's not in a rhyming fashion that it's hot. It's just standalone bars by themselves are hot. He's like, I got twin Desert Eagles cocked on the dashboard of your dream car. And I'm like, that's fucking
doesn't mean
hot.
anything. Yeah.
It doesn't, but it's fucking hot.
It does. It does sound amazing.
For some reason, or he's like, I got the 9 about to hawk a loogie, but it spit with the echo. My whole life I played the block. I was 6 with a Lego. And I'm like, what the fuck? Why is that fucking hilarious to me? He was 6 with a Lego. He's playing the block. Like, I don't know. That's funny to me. Because he has a delivery and he also has, what he more has is animation. Because he'll do something where he'll like kick in the door, like he'll kick his foot in front of the person like he's about to kick in the door at their house or whatever, and he'll do like smacking motions. He'll smack real hard, shake his dreads. He's super animated, which makes it really hit. But a funny thing about Arsenal to me is because I saw him when I was battling before Arsenal, I think. I don't know, maybe he blew up though. He might have battled before that, but like before he was popular, I was battling. I was on WorldStar. I saw his videos on WorldStar, and I knew that WorldStar had a trick that you could spam refresh or get bots to do it for you, that you would get 1 million views. And I purposely never did it, and I kicked myself for not doing it. It was stupid that I didn't. But I knew the trick. You could sit there and hold F5 and just get a bunch of views added to your counter. And I knew he was doing that. I'm like, this dude blatantly doesn't have these views, but he's getting them. Okay. And he would tell all of his friends to do it and blah, blah, blah. And it ended up getting him exposure because he got pushed to the top. And I knew what was happening as somebody who was maybe a little bit more technology savvy than the other WorldStar users. I knew what was happening. And I was like, this is stupid. And I would like talk shit about it on the forums and stuff. But in the end, Arsenal has been great at marketing himself. And I do think that in a battle, it is hard to beat him because of, and well, the one thing he does have to, what he does is he chokes. He needs to work on that. He chokes a lot, but
times, yeah.
It's
I have noticed that for
entertaining.
him though, they edit a lot of his chokes out. Like I've seen some of them where it's like he didn't notice it in it, but then everyone was like, "Oh, he choked for 10 minutes." You're like, what? Why wasn't that in the battle? There's a lot of politics like that, right?
I think there is, but to be honest, I don't really care about chokes that much. That's probably why I don't
good
do
lines
them.
off.
Yeah, that's probably why I don't choke that much. Is because I don't think if I have like had minor chokes, but like I don't think they matter. I don't think it affects the quality of what you're saying at all to me. So I don't really count them against him that much. But that's probably the only thing he really needs to work on, because some people severely dock you if you have chokes. They'll be like, "Oh, you lose the whole round because you choked for a second."
Yeah. Well, funnily enough, that, as you're saying there, that used to basically be one of the like very reductive criteria that the judges used to use in battles. Like you could have, like at the best one ever, this is the best example ever of like how terrible judging was in battle rap, was if you ever remember when Bender lost the King of the Dot chain to, I'm
Paul
his name now. No.
Sketch Menace.
Yes, Sketch Menace. Because here's the thing. I'll give credit to Sketch Menace. He did a good job in this battle. His side was good. He had that great Chain of Evolution line. But if you ever watch this battle, like Bender's, I think he chokes in the third. His first 2 rounds are so fire. I don't even care what happened in the third round. He definitely wins this battle. Like he has some godlike shit in this battle. But they all use the logic of like, but my man choked in the third or what. It's like, that is such a whack reason. Like, here's the thing. I definitely think there's a difference between the guy who chokes and, as Arsenal has done, pulls out his phone, reads all the bars off the phone. Like at that point, we're not using a fucking auto cue, Arsenal. But if you just choke and you lose like 30 seconds and you get it back and you didn't have an amazing round, the judging system definitely was flawed. Like I wanted to ask you about this topic. So I know in the URL, part of the reason why they don't judge battles there, if we're being real, is just because everyone's ego is too huge and they couldn't handle it if they fucking lost. And I mean, I won't go further and suggest like people might get shot, but put it this way, people would be very unhappy if certain big names, who I've alluded to them before, think they've never lost, but definitely have lost sometimes. If they lost, it'd be the end of the world. So I actually, myself, initially, I used to be against it, because as I'm saying, we come from the world where every battle was judged and, you had to know who won and lost to see who moved on. But I kind of feel now, personally, like it's a bit more like the UFC. Like, in the UFC, in theory, winning fights moves you up the ranks. But in reality, if you're really exciting in the UFC, they just put you up to the title fight as soon as they can. And if you're really boring, they're going to make you have to win like 15 fights in a row to get there. So really, they've sort of taken a cue from wrestling, that it's like, it's more about who the match is rather than like the sport side of it, Do you prefer the world with no judged battles and it's kind of just like, let's just both get our rounds off and then whatever, it's entertainment?
Yeah, I do prefer that, because it's so difficult to judge something so subjective. And I don't really think that there's very many people who are really capable of it. I've been judging battles on my own, like watching them and deciding who wins for a long time. And I've watched myself have, like, a great example of this is Iron Solomon when he came back at Grizzlemania. And everybody was saying that he was so tremendous against Ines. Right, they're like, he was so good. And he rocked the house. I'm like, Ines was fucking smashing him. I was like, I remember at the event, I'm standing there like, this dude is saying, what did he say? Sugar Ray Robinson crossing out his Wally moccasins. And he did like some, like, he said, I got the hawk and the revolver like a buccaneer, get to stabbing people up in here like a musketeer or something like that. And I'm like, I was like, whew. I remember it being hot, and I remember Iron Solomon being super corny the whole time. I'm like, dude, he was embarrassing. I can't believe he came back for that, because I loved Iron Solomon. I was so let down by him. But everybody's like, yo, Solomon killed it. And then years later, now people are like, yeah, actually, Ines kind of edged that battle. He won. But that's the thing that I don't like, is that times change, and maybe people don't realize what's happening. I don't know. So I don't like getting judged. I feel like I've gotten jerked on judging, so maybe I'm jaded. But I don't like the world of judged battles or having a record of you're this and this, because really the people that they get to judge them are people who sponsor the event. So there's some guy who owns a t-shirt company. He has a screen press in his garage, and he pushes t-shirts out. And now he's here judging whether I beat this guy in a rap battle. And I've been doing this for 10 years, and he's just been watching it for a couple months, and I got to let him decide who won. No, I don't like that.
Because here's the thing. When I was thinking of all my favorite pens over the years, actually, I noticed the matchmakers generally have done a pretty good job because they know that, sometimes it's good to see like a style of matchup where it's the same style. You never had a battle against Bender, even though you're in the same circles. That seems like one that should have happened.
Yeah, I think it got brought up a couple times, but it never really happened. He and I never really crossed paths. He was hot at a point where I was kind of cooling off.
Right.
And then he kind of really cooled off when I started heating up. So it just didn't really ever match up at the time. But he is somebody who I had a lot of respect for and was very talented, and we were always friendly with each other. And I'm trying to remember if I met him in person or not. And now that I think of it, I know I've been at events with him, but I can't remember really being with him in person. But I remember so many times chatting with him online. Like we used to talk a lot. But I don't remember hanging out with him in person or having a beer with him or anything like that. It's just kind of sad. But Bender was very talented. I had a lot of respect for him.
Because another name on that list, and obviously famously associated with Bender, is Lopeshi, because he's another guy who, had some very good lines.
Pesci, that thing that I was talking about, Canadian rhyming? He invented that. He invented that.
Okay. He's just selling me on some of this stuff.
Saying shit that doesn't rhyme whatsoever. I'm trying to think, man. If you watch it, just turn on Lopeshi for a second. You'll see what I'm talking about. The last syllable never rhymes with him. Like, he'll rhyme like sheen with gear. And I'm like, dude, that just doesn't rhyme. I don't care how many syllables it had in it. It didn't make sense. Like, I don't know. I don't know. But Pesci, I think he like majorly fell off when Daylight rubbed ball sweat in his face. Like he just fell off the face of the earth. And that was kind of bad for him to not come back and do something hot. Like he really needed to come back and have a great showing after that.
What do you think about that then? Let me ask you, because that's someone who overcame a stigma we referred to earlier. And now you're doing the same style. It's not like you just reverted your style completely to something else. You managed to get over it. That's like a classic example of where, even though he's done battles since, like that is just the easy KO that everyone has available to any point in time. If they just make any kind of a reference to balls on his face or daylight sweat or whatever, it's like for some reason it kills his character, Do you think it's actually possible to come back from something like that?
Absolutely. It definitely is. And I think it has to do with like who you surround yourself with. Like I can bring it back to the kind of people that I spend time with. I spend time with people like Rafa and people like Word of Play, people who have a winning mindset and in life are successful at other things. So maybe he doesn't have that. Maybe he doesn't have that kind of support system, because I saw the same kind of thing with Bender, where I don't think that his group of immediate friends, he was probably the most talented and probably most successful out of all the people that he knew. Sure. Now, I don't know that to be true for a fact, but that's my observation. And I think that's kind of what happened with Pesci as well. So like for me, I remember specifically being in Rockford and living in Rockford with Rafa and seeing the stuff that he was doing and him traveling, and I'm traveling at the same time. And I'm like, he's out here and he just won 12 grand or whatever last weekend. And I'm out here going to battle somebody and I'm making $1,500 or $2 grand or whatever it may be. You know what I mean? I'm like, this is kind of stupid. Like I was like, I got to get better. I've got to do something more with what I'm doing. So like I didn't want to go out like that, I guess. Whereas he has just maybe resigned himself to the fact that that's what happened and he's over it, because maybe he doesn't have that kind of, I don't know, motivation or people around him to kind of pump him up. But I was lucky enough to know people like that.
Okay, then, since you said you will give credit, who are some of your favorite writers? Who do you actually appreciate the bars legitimately, beyond, performance and who the popular guy is? Who do you like that we haven't referenced?
Well, we haven't really brought up some people. We haven't brought up Eric Foreman, who I really like. I don't watch a ton of battlers. I did mention that Big K is probably my favorite. I'm trying to think because I haven't been watching a whole lot. I think we kind of covered all the people that I do like. Bill Collector I really like because he's kind of silly with it. He says some funny stuff that I wouldn't think of. I really do like Diz. I don't really like his writing. He's another one that says a lot of things that I wouldn't say, but I love his aggression, and I like how seriously he takes it. It makes it like, this is my shit. When he's doing it, this is his shit. Nobody else can take that from him. So I do like Diz.
The thing about Dizaster, though, let me ask you this. One thing I always did think about his style is, like, he's another guy where I feel like he was, like, using a gimmick without letting on, which is, like, obviously his style anyway, because he's so, like, pumped up and so frenetic and energetic, you know, is he definitely loves to pretend like he just thought up some insane freestyle that is so crafted it's written. Like, probably the worst one ever. I actually, like, you know what? Fuck it, I'm not in battle rap, mate. I can't get in trouble, right? You remember one of the best battles of all time is Dizaster versus DNA. And within this battle, I think it's like the second round maybe, Dizaster does that amazing rebuttal where DNA has just finished talking about how he wanted the time limits to be longer and unlimited. And Dizaster does that rebuttal where he's like, you know, like, this world's mine, I control time. That's why they call me the Prince of Persia. Now, here's the problem with that logic. Unless someone leaked DNA's bars to him, they 100% collaborated to make that flip happen. Because there's no way he thought up, like it was just, like, if you just break down the structure of the rebuttal, it doesn't feel like it could be real. Like, I feel like I'm watching a really amazing, you know, in the WWE when they do, like, I flip you off my shoulders and you land and you catch, you know, like, it's like that wouldn't happen in a fight. Something. Yeah. Right. It felt like that. Listen, it was amazing. It still hits, but
well, I can tell you that they did not collaborate on that, but I know what happened because I've done it before with a rebuttal. Sometimes it's a weird thing where I've gone to so many events over the years where I've had a random bar, and let's say I have a bar about a 90s Nickelodeon show that nobody's thought of, the Wild Thornberries. I'm going to make a line about the Wild Thornberries. I go to that event with the Wild Thornberries bar, and of course I'm battling later in the card. One of the earlier people says Wild Thornberries, and I'm thinking, what the fuck? How did somebody possibly, on this event, out of the 12 people that are on the card, he thought he was going to mention the same show that I randomly thought of that I haven't thought of in 10 years. That stuff happens, and Dizaster, being that he's Lebanese, always thinks of Persian, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, anything like that. So Prince of Persia was already in his mind. He definitely has a lot of freestyle bars in his mind. But what he does is, I've done it before where somebody says something and it's like, I have the perfect exact thing to say to that because I've thought of it before. And he's somebody who raps every day. So he has that kind of material in store. So it was just a lucky coincidence on that one. And I saw that all unfold. It wasn't that he thought of it right then. Absolutely not. But he did have it in the back of his head and maybe wasn't planning on using it. It might have been from 6 months ago that he remembered it. You know, but he did pull it out, and during DNA finishing his round, crafted it just to make it fit a little bit, which is not very hard to do, especially if you have some freestyle ability. But I mean, I've definitely had that happen before. But Dizaster, somebody who will, after the Jonai battle, he comes up to me like, dude, this is all I had written. And he shows me like a WordPad file, and there's like 6 words in it. And I'm like,
he's just working off that.
I'm like, I'm not stupid, dude. Like, I do the same shit. So what I do is on the plane ride, I handwrite the bars, right?
By the way, I will tell you, this is something actually I've done in esports, which is one of the reasons why people think, right? So everyone says in esports that I have a photographic memory. I definitely don't, by the way, because that's so incredibly rare. And the whole point is people who actually have photographic memories, apparently it's called eidetic memory. They literally have a photographic memory. Like, you could show them a picture and they could draw it later. Like, I can't do any of that. But one of the reasons why it seems like I do for like esports knowledge is because, first of all, every time I've done an article about that topic, sometimes I'll purposely do the research I've already done again before again, so it's like rewriting it into my brain. And what you're saying now is literally a trick I learned actually from a very like obscure book about something totally different to do with memory technique, which is when you write a word with your hand, it also imprints it in your brain like a second or third way as opposed to saying or thinking it, you know. Like, these are different things. So is this something that you were alluding to there?
Absolutely, dude. I used to read those memory books. I read about photo reading. I read the, I can't remember, this dude like won the memory championships or whatever, and he could memorize sequences of cards, playing cards in order by assigning like images to them and envisioning a room in his house or whatever. So I learned all kinds of memory techniques. Yeah, Memory Palace. And I would look at the rhyming words in the right-hand side after I've handwritten 32 bars or however many it is in the round. And I would look at all the rhyming words, and when I'm recalling it in my mind, I see them in chunks of these ones rhymed, this 4 rhymed, this 8 rhymed, this 2, this 6, whatever. And I could see the last words in my head, but I couldn't see the whole thing. So I definitely don't have a photographic memory either, but it's just that I remembered writing that and it stuck out in my head. And then all I had to do was remember the first word of each verse. So I would do the same thing Diz did in my phone. I'd have the first word of all 3 verses. Oh yeah, that's how I start that verse, because you might not remember just the first thing and then you're good. So he showed me his little thing, like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And he's like, dude, this is all I had. I'm like, okay. Like, yeah, that's all you had.
I'm sure that works on other people. They're like, wow, you're so amazing, Dizaster.
It does. People are like, dude, he's like a fucking he's a monster, dude. He's an alien. I don't know how he does it. Like, he had no bars written. He just like wrote like a few words on his phone on the way here, and then he battled and had like 20 minutes of material, longer than anybody else who's ever written anything. But Diz is a cool guy. I remember something funny about Diz, and I don't know if I'm gonna piss him off. I don't know if I'm gonna get a mean tweet from him or whatever. But he, the first time I met Diz was in Oakland, and we had picked him up to take him somewhere, and he's like, dude, I was just at the gas station. I used to be a professional soccer player. I kicked this dude right in the head. I'm like, what?
That all sounds like a lie on every level.
You got in a fight with the guy at a gas station, had to kick him in the head. You didn't punch him? Like, you're doing kicks now? He's like, dude, I was a professional soccer player for years. I'm like, all right. So that was my first introduction to Diz, and ever since then,
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, last time I saw him, he's showing me the iPhone with the 6 words in the notepad. So
thing is, though, in line with his character and what he's like in battle rap, I can totally get why he could get away with telling outrageous stories like that. Because like, there's something about his personality where you want to believe him. Like, it just seems cool.
The weird thing is,
like, yeah, oh, you kicked him, really?
The tough thing is with Diz is that he actually has done a lot of incredible shit, and he's actually super talented. Yeah. Like, he can play piano really well. He can actually sing. He can do impressions and voices. Like, he can do an Australian accent like spot on. He's like really good at. He's talented. He really is, and he's also a lot of the like gangster shit that he's done in his life is actually more than I would think.
Oh, okay.
And he actually doesn't rap about it as much as I would have thought he would have. And the problem was he didn't bring it in until later, because he was riding the wave of popularity of what was popular at a time. And then when something else became popular, like the street stuff became popular, he's like, dude, I was doing this stuff. And he actually was doing it. That's kind of the weird thing, is that it seems fake because he wasn't doing it and then he switched to saying he was doing it. But I think his past, from what I know to be true, is actually a little bit more along the lines of somebody who definitely sold drugs and had guns and around him and was around people who were dangerous and stuff like that. He's one of the more people who actually is from that walk of life, I guess.
Because actually, you know, speaking of like the stage delivery and these aspects, which that's another thing that casual fans need to learn. To be fair, other battle rappers do. Like, when I hear some of the people who I alluded to are a bit delusional about thinking they've won, mostly it's not even that they're not good rappers. It's just that they think rap is one thing. Like, for example, you know, they think it's like street shit, or you have to be like up on the lingo, or you have to be in the guy's face. It's all about aggression, you know, basically whatever their strength is. And so if you're a guy who has just great bars or clever thing, they just don't acknowledge that whatsoever. They think that's just nothing, you know. And I've noticed, actually, it's obviously more of a URL crowd type thing. But one of the things that always just, for me, like had a complete disconnect is on URL, sometimes they'll do a type of rapping, which I would best describe as, it's not even rapping. It's just trying to make a point that you can think about. It's not even really like a clever point. You're like, ooh, that's really going to twist my melon. It's like a point that for 1 second seems clever, but really what you're selling is like, that's hard, man. That's cold. So I'll give you an example. In the very recent Murder Mook versus A-Verb battle, even though A-Verb does very well in the battle and he has a lot of great lines, it's great, like, and energy and stuff, he has like a line where he just, as a premise, explains that, you know, I'll kill you in this way because if you kill a man in his own home, that's personal. And when he said it, I almost laughed, like, because I thought he was joking, making like, you know, the movie reference of like, this time it's personal. But he wasn't. He was just actually trying to make the premise that if you kill a man in his own house, that's personal. And everyone in the whole crowd goes, ooh. And I'm just going like, but that's actually not anything. There's nothing clever about that. There's no wordplay. You've just said basically you'd kill him. Like, I get that that's like, if you're trying to, you know, project strength, you're sort of doing that, but it's not, there's no sporting element to that. It's not actually anything really.
Yeah, it's rough. I've noticed that from the beginning with URL. A big problem that I had was that they spoon feed crowds wordplay, and they kind of go out of their way to demonstrate that they're like, hey, I'm getting to something here. I'm getting to something here. So you better pay attention and react when I get to this punchline here. And here it is. And they're like, whoa, he was really saying something. Yeah. But he wasn't. It was something that was just like anybody would understand that. But they don't want to be the URL crowds want to feel like they're the one that got it. They want to feel like, I got that. I listen to battle rap. I got that. I understood that.
Sure. Makes sense. Right. What about this then? So, since you've alluded to the fact you don't even know, will you do another battle? If you do, does it have to be the total right time? Since, as you've said, it's not like anyone's, except for rare exceptions, making mad money from this, it seems like, I know this might sound harsh to people in the industry, but it feels a bit like the industry element's capped out a bit, It got pretty big for a while. It's obviously big on YouTube. It has pay-per-view elements, but I think, funnily enough, we've got the same problem in esports, People haven't quite figured out, like, how you make the jump up from, like, getting pretty big, like, fringe of mainstream, to how do you become, like, fully mainstream. And to be fair, maybe it'll never happen. I mean, everyone remembers when they were a kid and they had the fucking Pokemon cards and the Pogs, or, shit sometimes just as a phenomenon. It doesn't last forever. What do you think? Will battle rap, can it get bigger? Will it stay the same? Will it just still be a niche thing? What's your take on it?
I truly think it's about the biggest it's going to get. I really think that. I mean, like, it's on TV. They have that show where they get celebrities and they have, like, the Saurus on there and he, like, writes the raps for them or whatever. Okay. And they have, like, Awkwards and Roan and a couple other people that write the bars. And they have, like, B and C list celebrities come on and rap battle each other. Then you've got Wild 'N Out, where they've got Conceited and Sharon and Hitman, and they do that. But I don't think it could get much bigger than that. I truly don't. I mean, there's only so much room for it, and it's not... The stuff that the mainstream would want and do want is backwards from where we are. It's something that's a lot more surface level and more like the grind time stuff that was lazy.
They would like the sort of short rounds with simple concepts, like a simple tag or something.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's going to get much bigger. Now, esports, I think, will get bigger. I think it can and will, and it'll continue to get bigger. Battle rap, not so much. I think that there's a lot more money to be made in esports. I think that... yeah, I mean, there's clearer paths to making money and quicker paths. And battle rap, there's even the league owners are not making money. So it's like, what's the point? You know what I mean? And there's not really a good segue to be like, hey, I did a lot of stuff in battling. Like, I was able to do battling and segue it into tours with people. Like, I went on 2 tours with G-Eazy. I went on tour with Riff Raff and like things like that. But it's even like now that's even more difficult to do. Like, you can't, because back then YouTube was kind of newer and people didn't understand where it was going. Now it's kind of easy to see like, hey, these videos aren't really doing that much. You can't really parlay it into something bigger. At least I haven't seen it done yet. Maybe somebody will. I hope that they do. But honestly, what battle rap attracts because of the way the money is, it doesn't really attract the most talented people. I think probably the best battlers in the world have never jumped into the ring doing it because there's not enough incentive for them to do so. The people that you see now are coming into it because they're like, hey, there's people who are trash on here and I'm better than some of them, so I might as well give it a shot. It's not like I'm want to be the best at this. I don't really see much of that. I don't see many people coming in like, I'm going to be the guy. I see most people coming in like, I want to be somebody. I want to be a person in the league. I don't want to be the best guy. I mean, it'd be cool if I was, but I'm just coming in because I know I'm not going to be the worst, but I'm probably not going to be the best. That's the attitude that I see with everybody in battle rap, and I think that's why it hasn't grown, because I haven't seen anyone new in a long time that I thought was even halfway decent.
When you say that that actually reminds me of a phenomenon that happens in esports, which is that when people have been pro players and, maybe they had the 3 or 4 years where they were like very good, they were at the big tournaments, maybe they won some of them. Whenever they quit, right, they always quit for a good reason. Like, at the time in the old days, there wasn't enough money, or, you'd become like 22 or something and you can't keep doing this forever. Whatever the reason was, or they just didn't like the game anymore. They burned out playing one game for 5 years. Whenever they would quit, there'd always be a good reason. They'd move on and you'd think, right, that's the end of of that. We're not going to hear from that guy again. But there would be so many times they would do a comeback. And I can tell you from getting to know a lot of these guys, the real reason for the comeback wasn't like, they've rediscovered their love for the game or they want to compete. Because usually when they would try the comeback, it wouldn't go that well and they eventually would quit for good anyway. But what tended to happen was when they left esports, they just saw all the negatives. They were like, right, I'm not winning anymore, or I'm getting bored of the game, or I want to do something else in life. They would go off, try something else in life, and what they'd find is, well, in real life, I'm just a normal dude, aren't I? Like in esports, I was this big name. People would see me and be like, hey, oh my God, you're so sick, And that's what they miss. They miss, like, as you're saying, being someone, having a name, I mean, like, obviously, like, I'm sure half the angles used in battle rap are jokes. So, like, I doubt T-Rex is a male nurse or whatever they implied he was. But if he is, being a male nurse isn't as cool as whatever T-Rex seems like when he's on stage. He seems fucking sick then and everyone's loving it, Right. Is there an element of that for you? Is that why you don't fully just leave? Do you still want to sometimes be Fresco in that sense?
Oh, for years I wanted to be Fresco when I was doing that. Now I'm at a point in my life where that's not really the case anymore. So now I've gotten to the point, and I guess maybe I was fortunate enough to have my real life advance past where my pretend imaginary life was as Fresco. So now it's not that important to me to do that. Now it's just about the fact of loving competition, and just generally I like the format of battle rap. I like what it is. I do, and I think that I do it well. I think that there's something that I bring that no one else really brings. So I like to do that, but at the same time, a large reason why I did it for many years is because I wasn't doing anything else. So it was like, all right, my real life is not really that great, but I could say I was just in Australia, or I was just in Toronto, or I was just in New York, or I was just in LA doing this, and this. So no one can say I wasn't doing anything because I was constantly traveling and I was constantly doing events. So that was a big reason why I did it at all through those years. Because to be honest, during grind time, after the first couple battles, I was pretty disillusioned with it for a long time until the Saurus battle is when I actually started. Like, that was me being like, all right, I want to do this. But I think that is a major reason why people do battle rap. And you're right, in esports, I've seen that too. Like, there's a lot of people who are, they're really good. Like, I remember. Well, I mean, they still do it. They still want to play because they want to get known. They get recognized in pugs and stuff like that. Like, I remember K Sharp coming back to play on like some silly team or whatever. Just it's like he can't get away from the game. It's not that you quit because you don't want to spend time. You're still playing a ton. You're just not playing seriously, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, what about this then? Since you said, like, you dropped the name G-Eazy, who obviously is fucking huge now, but this is a few years back, right? When you get to sort of, because obviously this is a theme in battle rap, which is battle rappers like to imagine that they're going to get big as a battle rapper, and then they're going to put some songs on whatever music player. They're then going to get an industry deal and become a massive star. Now, I hope it goes without saying, the fact that even the best battle rappers of all time haven't done that, and there literally is almost no one who's ever had even a legit deal beyond like simple, like, they were like a feature on someone's track or, whatever the fuck. And obviously we've also seen it doesn't work the other way. Like, the last 5 industry rappers to come back in have been murked so hard. Like, it's only the fact they didn't understand battle rap that they don't know how hard they got killed. Like, every single one of them was embarrassing. And obviously the best example is the Cannabis one, because he didn't even get his rounds off. It was a fucking meme, wasn't it? Like, but anyway,
yeah, it was rough.
The point I was going to get to is this. When people do get the chance to sort of get into what seems like the next level, like, I'm in the industry world here, I'm at proper shows, I'm touring, etc. Right? I've found this in my own life. Again, I can relate this to esports. When the events started getting bigger and bigger, and, suddenly we're in like real venues, like, the fucking Madison Square Garden or somewhere like totally insane that you think I'd never be at the Staples Center. When you're in these venues, you start to think to yourself, can't be that far from where we're at to where like the real sporting aspect is. And what I realized, sadly, is that so much of the world is sort of like, it is fake. It's a glamour. It's for the cameras. And so the best example I'll give you is, whenever you see those red carpet events, like the Oscars or something, I mean, they'd even admit it. When you see like the most famous actress in the world, and in theory, she gets paid, $7 million every movie, every year. She has insane endorsements. And yet, if you remember, whenever she's wearing some sick dress and some amazing jewels, she'll even say, oh, the dress was given to me by this designer, and the jewels, you know, they're not mine. I was given them by this like special jeweler in New York or something. And what the epiphany I had was, I thought to myself, wait a minute, if even she doesn't own that dress and those jewels, who the fuck does? And what you realise is the only person who actually has any of this stuff that we see in all the videos and all the TV stuff is someone so rich they're not even on TV. Like, you know, you never hear from that. It's like some banker's wife or something, you know. Like, the actual, like, TV, it is a bit fake, isn't it? It's kind of for sure.
It's totally fake. I mean, I can't tell you how destitute some of these. I mean, the battlers and what we talk about and like rapping about cars and money and stuff like that, even the amounts of drugs they talk about that would cost them way too much money than they could afford. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen these guys at the hotel at 12:30 at night who can't get into their room that was already paid for because they don't have a debit card or credit card to put down for incidentals. Like that, it's like these people, their lives are completely different than what you would think. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that battling will ever get that big. I'm not sure if you were getting at these people's lives being that way or the whole battle.
I feel like all of it. I feel like it even ties into the bigger picture. Like, I even feel like a lot of what we think of as celebrity culture is probably like way over scaled up, you know, to a level it's not even real for them, you know. I think because, put it this way, the one person I can think of, the one type of a person who really does have, you know, the 7 Bentleys is the athletes, and it's very famous. They're all broke the second they all retire, you know, like even like they're actually like mismanaging their money. I mean, it's like I always say to people, from actually getting a bit more money in my own life to actually afford like a Lamborghini, you better be making like $10 million a year or more, you know, like the actual amount you'd need to make that worth the insurance payments. Like, no one who just makes like 100K is getting something like that. Or if you do, you're going to go broke very fast.
Yeah, I didn't realize that until once you start making 6 figures and realize that it ain't shit. And you're like, all right, well,
exactly, it isn't shit. But you know, when you're on the little amount that we were at the beginning, you think that's the world. You think, oh, I've made it. That's it. I'm there.
Yeah, exactly. No, I definitely think that it's truly inflated. I think most of the celebrities, you think, like you said, like an actress who makes $7 million a movie. Well, how many good movies does she have? How many movies total does she have?
Sure.
Maybe 5. And how many of them were that great of a movie? How do you think she was getting that the whole time? Probably not. And think about the course of time of her career. How much money could she really have? It's really not that much. I mean, she probably has some endorsements. She does something here or there, but it's like realistically, she's not. They don't have as much money as you think they do. So yeah, I think big picture wise, it definitely makes sense too. But on this scale, it's you'd be surprised at the state of affairs of most of these battlers' lives. And I think that you've probably seen that in gaming, but it's a little bit more expected in gaming because it's like these guys are expected to live at home with their parents or something like that. But you wouldn't expect this guy who comes off to be a drug dealer and gang member to be living in the same kind of conditions or even worse than an esports player would be.
Since you touched on it earlier, like one of the main reasons you still do battle rap, essentially, if I had to rephrase it, it's like for the craft of it, right? It's like trying to get better or like improve a certain area or do something that like no one else is doing. Is battle rap one of those things where, like, for example, in esports, any of the games I've followed, Counter-Strike, whatever, Quake, it looks to an outsider like, well, you can't get much better than that. And it's like, you actually always can. The mad thing is, there's almost like a limitless depth, you know, as to how like amazing the skill level can get or the understanding of the game. Is battle rap like that? Do you think it can just keep, as long as like, you know, there's enough money to keep it going and there's events, could it keep going for years and years and years and still keep evolving?
Oh yeah, I think so. Absolutely. I think there's always more things that can be said. And as time passes on, especially right now, because I think one tough thing though, is that in the 90s, there weren't as many options for entertainment as there are now. So one thing that works really well right now is nostalgia. So if you bring stuff back to the 90s, if I mention a 90s show, everybody knows exactly what that show is. But 10 years from now or 20 years from now, if you try to mention a show that's now, a lot of people won't resonate with people because they won't remember it because it wasn't as much of a phenomenon as things were in the 90s. Like there's a 90s show, you think about Family Matters or Full House or something like that. These are shows that are just everybody saw. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, everybody saw that show. So everybody knows what Friends is. the shows that are on now, I don't know what they are. Right now, I don't know. And whoever's growing up with those shows right now, half of them may not know it in 10 years. So it may be different. It may be different what hits with everybody. But I'm sure that there's enough common ground that you'll find some creativity there. Because the more shows, video games, wrestling, pop culture that happens, the more ammunition there is for battling and to make that into a way to insult someone else.
Yeah, the funny thing is, when you were talking earlier about like the point of, so for example, one of the things that became very, very big in sort of the last 5 years in battling is trying to have the most up-to-date street lingo. You know, you have to have the way to say like a car or some drugs that like, you know, the key that I've noticed the key to the secret is, because it has to be super up to date, you don't want the whole crowd to get it. You want like 10% of the crowd to get it because they really know that slang, and then they give you like the nod of like, oh yeah, like all the battle rappers give you the nod like, oh, he knows that shit. But what you actually want is like a solid 80% of the crowd to vaguely know what you mean, but not know, but want to know and want to be like, oh shit, is that the new thing? Yep. Oh god, because that's what makes it seem super sick, right? Well, when you were talking about that as like the imagery, you know, of like, it's not really about like, it's not, you're not really pretending you're actually like a drug dealer and selling drugs and like killing people, but that's just like the backdrop in which the sporting aspect of competition takes place. And then, you know, these are my moves, here's his moves, here's the scouting report. Well, actually, that does tie into the esports theme, because one of the reasons why I feel like esports blew up is because in the early days, you did have a lot of people who got caught by the surface level. So for example, in Counter-Strike, they think, oh, so it's about like terrorists and using guns and bombs. And it's like, dude, I know why you're saying that because you've just seen the game. But if you play the game for even 2 weeks, you don't even see a terrorist anymore. You see, right, I'm on the offensive side. You know, it's like football. I'm trying to get this to this point. I'm planting the bomb, right? I've got to defend it now. Really, the imagery, it actually is just surface level. It means nothing. Really, it's like...
Yeah, Quake is like pentagrams and stuff like that. And it's like, who cares about that?
So it's like, you know, here's the sport, and once you strip it away, this is just how do you score a point, how do you defend a point, you know, these things, right? Well, battle rap is basically the same, you know, and I feel like that's why battle rap maybe hasn't blown up as much as it could, because too many people, especially people who don't know much about rap, they do think it's like, oh, so what, these guys are really all drug dealers, or like what you have to know about like selling guns. It's like, no, you just have to sort of learn a bit of the lingo, and then it's how they have fun with it. It's how they get creative, right?
Exactly. That's a really good analogy, actually. I think that's it's pretty spot on, because I think that if people, but it's just a matter of if they want to get to know that, you know, some people may not want to learn that lingo. I think that they just they shy away from it a little bit. But me being in, I guess I just like language and words and things like that. So I wanted to know all of that stuff, and learning it and then using how to use it against someone else was interesting to me. But I'm not sure if everyone really has that. I think it's a little bit easier with gaming because you sit down and play it, and you can kind of you get suspended in reality because you're actually the one doing it. Now, if these people were going to do a rap battle, I think it'd be a little bit different. Now, watching it to be entertained is a little bit more difficult, because you could play Counter-Strike and be like, okay, this is terrorist, counter-terrorist, there's bombs, but then you play it and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. Now I'm winning. I'm the last guy alive, and there's 4 of them alive, and I have to figure out how am I going to win in the next 35 seconds. And that's exciting. But and it's easy to see, but I think in battling it's a little bit tougher to get that through to people.
Because, you know, one of the craziest things is like when someone will ask me, like I said at the beginning of the interview, where, you know, someone saw like that tab that had battle rap, and they all thought like, why has he got that? Like, what the fuck? Who would care about battle? Like, they all thought, by the way, that I was trying to be like a wigger and like pretend like I'm in this culture. Where it's like, listen, I'm totally open. I'm from England. I don't know anything about drugs or fucking guns, but I just like, this is the key part I always tell people when they ask me why I like battle rap. I say I like clever stuff. I like it when I can see what someone's doing and somewhat clever there. Now, here's the thing I wanted to ask you about, because no one mentions this ever. I alluded to before how bad the industry rappers that come in is, right? One reason why I have always found it a bit weird that no one can make the jump from battle rap to like being a real industry rapper is some of the best pens in battle rap. I'm not joking. I would say they are 100 times better than most people's favorite industry rapper. Like, if you go back and listen to whatever your favorite 50 Cent album is, the lines on there, judged from a battle rap standpoint, are fucking trash. Like, he has almost no hot lines. His lines really are like, I rhymed the end of this word with this one, or, you know, I said something cool that, you know, you thought was fun because of my personality. There's nothing. There's no cleverness, right?
Yeah, no, I totally see what you're saying, and I used to think that too. and I have kind of grown out of that. I've started to think that their presence and their tonality and the way that they ride the beat or the melody that they bring along with them. I mean, well, especially now, if you look at in 2018, the way that people are doing songs and structuring everything, it's like it's so much to do with melody. There's no words to it at all. And I think that kind of started in the last 10 years and it just kind of went on and on. It's really, no one cares about lyrics. Nobody wants to hear lyrics. They want to hear maybe a cool word, but they don't want to hear anything that rhymes, that's cool or that's clever, that was hard to think of. They just want to hear a cool slang word, something that's funny or something like that. But really what they want to hear is a melody, and they want to have something that they can mumble along to or whatever. They don't know what the person's saying even. And yeah, I know what you mean. But I will say and I hate when people say this, but I'm just gonna say it to you, is everybody would say, well, Eminem was a battle rapper and he was at Scribble Jam and he got discovered by Dr. Dre and everything like that. So he's like technically the only one that ever did it, but he was never a successful battle rapper. He never won anything. He lost to Juice, and he came with all writtens to a freestyle battle and still lost. So I don't know. That side note, I guess it is worth mentioning.
Sure. Okay, so at the end of this interview, do you have like a final message for anyone who watched? Or maybe you want to say hello or thank or shout someone out?
Yeah, I mean, I guess shout out to the people we talked about. Rafa, Real Deal, Eric Foreman, Where to Play, those kind of people. But overall, yeah, Lost Cause. Man, I haven't talked to or heard from him in so long. But Rafiq, if you see in this, send me a tweet or something, dude. But yeah, man, that's about it.